Welcome to the Miniatures Paintbrush. Today we're going to paint up a Space Wolves Primaris Redemptor Dreadnought. Alright, welcome back. Here is a Primaris Redemptor Dreadnought, and making it Space Wolf style. I'm going to start off with some Cold Grey after priming it black with Stynel Res. So Cold Grey is going to give the tone or the pre-shading that we want with the value kind of we're adding into the undercoats. This pre-shading will show up slightly in our final overall coat and color that we're going for. Pre-shading is the way I paint. I love to pre-shade. I know that acrylic paints are translucent, so if you put a nice gradient as a pre-shade, then it's going to translate in your final product, giving it that brighter hot spots in the center and shadows in the edges of all the panels. So this is a practice that I use and utilize just about as much as I possibly can with all my paint jobs, and it really pays off in the end. All right, let's go on to the next step, which is some Foundation White. That's right, some Foundation White. And what we're going to do here is we're creating hot spots, just bringing it straight up to the hot spots, having a very, very stark kind of contrast. We do have the blacks, we have the gray, and now we're bringing it up to the white. White is the brightest color you could possibly get. Again, this gets muted down a bit when you actually add the value of the color in which you want to paint your model. And this one, I choose a special blue, a Space Wolf's blue, which I'll show you in just a bit. Make sure that you hit the center of the panels when doing this. You can take some artistic liberty, whatever you wanted to bring up to make a hot spot, go for it. The rule of cool is definitely in place here, so don't feel like you're bogged down by the limitations of physics, although physics do make an item look real. It doesn't necessarily make it interesting. All right, some heavy Bluegrey, and what I'm doing is I'm muting the transitions from that white into the gray into the black, and just giving a quick overall very, very liquidy coat. All right, so next up is the Werewolf Grey, and this is from Minotaur, and I like using this one for my Space Wolves Gray, or light blue if you want. And again, very diluted through the airbrush, just tinting all that lovely pre-shading. You're not going for coverage here, because if you get coverage, you got to cover up all those pre-shading details, and everything we've done is for nothing. So you want it translucent. You just want a nice little light coat. And when in doubt, put an extraordinarily light coat and build it up. All right, time for some bottle caps. Well, just one bottle cap. I don't use any kind of metallic paint, this is burnt iron from Vallejo metal color. Can't get enough of those paints. I don't use them on my wet palette because I can contaminate the palette with metal flakes. So I recycle by using the bottle caps that I drink water out of. All right, so moving on with black. And what we're going to do here is just the black chords. We're going to hit all the areas that I want black. I mean, this is subjective, and it's up to you when you're painting your miniature. So I painted just randomly a chord here, a chord there, things that attach to each other. Anything that I feel like is going to be metal or black, this is what I went for. All right. Also did the cross over here. And let's talk about yellow. I start with a base of Averland Sunset, and then I coat the Averland Sunset with Yriel Yellow from Citadel. And the reason I do this is it gives that Space Wolf bright yellow color, and I've been experimenting with yellow for a long time. And for some reason, this is the coat, the color combination that I feel works best for my Space Wolves. Again, you could have other variations of this or anything that you're used to. There's no wrong way. The thing is that, are you interested in it? Do you like it? So Continuing on to other pieces, I'm just going to hit yellow pieces there. And I'm going for a little like between a... No, the quality of paint job here is between a tabletop or maybe above tabletop, leaning into display models, although not a display models. These are all functional within my army. Now, this Redemptor Dreadnought is the easy to build model. It is not the one that comes in the box set for the Space Wolves that's getting released right now, although I find there's more visual interest in this one. And there's nothing stopping you from adding the accoutrement that comes with creating this model. In fact, with that accoutrement, I actually got from box sets from other Space Wolves that I built on throughout the series, and you could check the playlist of Space Wolves to see all the Space Wolves that I've done in the past. All right, just going on for some chords as well. Here we're going to black and making those hazard stripes. I always wanted to try stripes, and with every model I do something different. I've never done these straight across like this, so I'm just adding these lines in there and seeing what it does. I've done tribal symbols from black to white, but I've never quite done a freehand straight without using any kind of guide or whatever to build these up. So it's quite simple. Start with your original line for each and slowly, and I can't emphasize this anymore, slowly thicken that line up per pass. And while one line dries, you move on to the next one, and you have to ensure that they all look even. Worst case scenario, painted white, painted the base color again, painted the highlight color again, and start over again. Yes, that's a bit of a lengthy process, but I can't emphasize it again. Do it slowly, do it easily, and don't sloppily put this on here. I mean, some people work better when they slop on paint. I'm not one of those people, so I have to carefully do things. Here is my layer brush. This is from Citadel. I got it last year at the Nova Open. I'm going to the Nova Open this year. I might be entering this model into the competition at Nova Open. I'm really hoping to do that. Who knows what would happen? Maybe it's something a little different, right? I get some recognition. That would be amazing. I would be overjoyed. So building it up slowly on these, taking your time, taking care to do it is really important. Now, there are some areas when you can say, well, Rob, when aren't you really super careful? And there are certain bits where I'm not really careful. Like if I'm just doing a base coat for an overall piece, then I kind of I'll carefully, I'll carefully go on an outline, and in the center I kind of use a big brush and just go for the coverage. But with these details, again, slopping it on, taking your time here is definitely rewarding towards the end. Now, I'm really excited about the Space Wolves release. I'm not crazy about that box set that's coming out, because I'm not a fan of Gene Stealers, and I'll probably have to split that box. And I think, and this is just conjecture here, that what's in that box is going to be a starter set for the Space Wolves. It's going to replace the starter set that's on, or addition to the starter sets that's on. Although, when it comes to Primaris, they have 2 wounds and they cost the same as a regular Marine. It incentivizes you to pick a Primaris over a regular Marine. But since I have all these Marines painted, whoop-de-doo, I'm going to play them, so there you go. I'm not a competitive player. I just paint models who realize that I can actually use these models to play a game, and then I socialize with people. So that's how I do it. I do want to apologize for my voice if it sounds a little bit off. I've been a little bit under the weather lately, and actually I just got my voice back yesterday. For the most part, it's been really, really raspy, and I'm recovering for that. So I do apologize if it is not your normal voice here. All right, you're going to notice there that I actually have this onto the base. I don't know, I was playing around. I was just plugging it onto the base to see how that snap fit felt. And I sort of did not like it for both legs. So I kind of chipped one of the legs when it came to the pegs that go into the bottom piece off. Again, this is the easy to build model, so it comes with those pegs. The regular model, I don't think comes with those pegs, and it is a lot harder to build. So there you go. So there it is. Those are the stripes. This is exactly how I do stripes. So if you ever wondered, now you know. Okay, so let's talk about green. Flat green I'm going to start with, and then I'm going to have an intermediate green for exactly what it sounds like, the intermediate color. And finally, Escorpina green for the highlight, extreme highlight colors that I like to give. And this is what I apply to everything I put green to. It always goes in triads, usually. I usually go base coat, mid-tone, and then highlight. If I wanted to go crazy with a piece, if I feel like it's for this ultra-high crystal brush first place entry, I would spend, I don't know, about a week doing just the green because I would have like 5 to 10 different layers of green just so I can get the polished look of each individual item. But I'm not going to go crazy. Again, this is my version of tabletop or above tabletop to display kind of quality, and that's what I'm going for here. And doing that kind of quality, it doesn't take too much effort. Notice that it's just a base coat. That's all I'm doing, just a base coat. You have to take a study of light, or you have to think about at least where the light is coming from. You have to decide where the light is coming from, and you need to be homogeneous throughout the entire painting process, keeping that in mind that the light is coming from. Usually it's above. If you want help to know where the light is, so you know where your intermediate color is, where your base color is, and then where to put your highlight, then what you can do is take a black and white photo, right, of your miniature that's unpainted under a light that is, well, decently powerful, not to wash out your picture, but powerful enough that you can see the shadows and you can see the highlights. Take a picture of the model, print said picture out. Again, it's black and white, so you don't have to use a color printer for that. If you do want to use color printer for that, then go for it. But I enjoy the black and white because it really shows the shadows and it really shows the highlights. And follow that as a design. And what I mean by that is that where the highlights are, you're going to want to put that Escorpina green, kind of liquid it down. I'll glue it a little glaze, build it up slowly at a time, just so it can look like a reflection of a highlight, a hot spot on whatever it is that you're painting. And then, you have that base color, which is the darkest color, shadow, intermediate green. Fade that Escorpina green into that intermediate green. And don't go all the way down with the intermediate green. Stop halfway and kind of just like, feather it out into your regular color. Doing that with any color. A highlight color into an intermediate color into a base color, and you can pretty much get a gradient on everything you paint, and it will elevate your painting. So try to make sure you know where the light is. Again, use a reference if you need to. I've been doing this for a while, so I have an idea of where the light's going to be placed. Sometimes, depending on the model, I do need that reference, and that's okay, I mean, I'm still learning. Like I say before, every time I do a miniature, I try to push myself in certain directions. Now, they're baby steps. Some people work really quickly, where they pick up a lot of things very quickly. I am not that person. I learn very slowly. I make small changes over time, and I keep practicing it until I get where I want. Now, some people may think, Rob, I'm familiar with this model. This is a easy to fit model. Why were you doing the carapace? Because that's going to get covered anyway. Because I notoriously do pieces that nobody's going to see. I do record these videos so I know you can see them. That's good enough for me. If you saw them, I know they're there. And I've seen them too. I've taken a picture of it. Then I don't care. I can cover it up. And I guess if you shine the light into the carapace over the ridge of his, the carapace cover, you can actually see the detail actually runs straight through. And maybe if it's in a competition, judges will look at that and say, hey, we noticed that you went the extra mile and got every piece of detail complete. So, I'll be happy with that, honestly. Alrighty, so getting all the green parts. Now, I do this with all the colors. I do this with green. You're going to see me do it with red. I also do it with blue. When I do it the green and the red, it's going to look very, very festive, as in holiday jingle bell season. So bear with me on that. When the blue comes in, it kind of levels itself out a little bit and looks a lot better. All right, so next up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go for green on the wire too. Now, notice that I'm varying up where I'm putting the green. I kind of like separated. I don't want too many green things close together. Too many green things close together, it looks like it doesn't look natural. So I'm going to put a green spot on the bottom, a green spot on the back, a green spot on the front, really maybe a button on the carapace. I do that as well, just to vary it up. Again, having that more visual interest. The more colors you put on these wires, in my personal opinion, the more visual interest you're going to give. It kind of looks like it. And there are not that many wires that, you can really outdo the color, and it saturates and confuses the eye, in my opinion, with this model. So, I say have some fun. I'm also going to do a button, and I'm going to do it in the same manner. And this is exactly the same manner I do jewels or gems, which I've done in many, many, many of my builds. You can check that out. But again, those are the three colors. The only difference is I'll add a white highlight, just a dot on the top. All right, so now that we've gotten the highlights done for green, let me show you the colors that I use for red. I'm not going to go out into detail like I did for green. I just wanted to show you. I'm going to start with a Mepeston Red from Citadel. It's a base color. I'm going to do a mid-tone of Evil Sun Scarlet, which is a Citadel layer, and then a Wild Rider Red, which is also a Citadel layer. And the Wild Rider Red is going to be the extreme highlight, where Evil Sun Scarlet is going to be the middle intermediate, and then the base coat is Mepeston Red is going to be the shadows. All right. Again, studying light. It's the same exact procedure. I'm not going to belabor this. You saw enough with the green, and you know how I work. I'm going to work around the model, just adding variation to it, and really varying where I put the color. It's really important. So lighting and where your color placement is are extremely important after you've base coated. Now, I always base coat my miniatures using my airbrush. It just saves so much time. The transitions are amazing, and then I just build up everything else with the brush, and that's how I like to work when I'm building miniatures. You can develop your own style if you wish. Alrighty, so now what I want to talk about is blue. I start with a dark Prussian blue from Vallejo model color. I go for a mid-tone with a sky blue, again Vallejo model color, and the superb highlight is going straight to white, Foundation White, Vallejo model color. And that's exactly how I do the blue now. Again, not belaboring the issues, just like I did with the red. I'm going to go around the miniature and just hit varying places with it as well. I also wanted to show you how I do the lighting, that I did a blue lighting on top. Again, exactly the same way I would do anything else, but it's a different shape. Now, one of the things that you need to consider when you're doing base and then intermediate and then highlight and possibly extreme highlight, if you want to really get fancy, is that you have to consider the shape of the object and what you're doing. Different shapes, like cylinders, has a horizontal kind of line where that cylinder is meeting when you look at it. Take a cylinder, take a black and white picture of it, and put a light on top, directly on top of it, and you're going to see that it's lighter on the top, and it's going to have a complete line where it separates where the shadow is from the top, especially with metal. You got to see that as well. And doing these colors helps you build up practice for non-metallic metal. So if you're ever trying to do non-metallic metal, it's pretty much this very similar premises as far as light, where the light is, doing extreme highlights. Your blending needs to be on point, and this is great practice for that. That's why I always do this, just to heighten my non-metallic metal skills as well. So again, going that foundation white, just doing a dot on the surfaces of the area to add a glimmer to it. All right, so also getting the wires in between. Now, it is tough to get there is no easy way to do this. It is tough to get in there. I'm using a Complete Strategist brush. I bought it in Manhattan from this store called the Complete Strategist. It's the first miniature store I've ever entered in my life. Back in the 90s, early 2000s, and when I started miniature painting, period. So it was interesting. I'm using that one because it was a brand new brush and I haven't used it before, so I wanted to be very, very precise. I wanted the bristles to be hard, so that's why I'm using it, to get into those cricks and crevices. So if you do have this model, you want to get in there, I recommend a small, fine tip brush, you're using the point, so the point might get a little scuffed up, but hey, get a disposable fine tip point. Just use it for the model. Some of them are inexpensive, $1, and you get yourself a brush. All right, so next up is Foundation White. I'm going to mix this with inks. I like FW inks, Stella Roundy. I think I'm saying that right. I used to get it at my Hobby Lobby. They no longer carry it at Hobby Lobby, so I mean, I guess it's the internet for you. These actually come in a very, very large bottle, and they will last a very long time unless you're doing a snow-covered terrain and you decide to airbrush the entire 4x6 table using just the ink, not watered down. Then I can imagine it'll blow right through that. Let me show you how I mix the foundation white with the ink. So you notice there's some foundation white there and some ink there, and then I just put it together. Let me take a little bit of water and I just throw it together, and that's pretty much it. You may want to do some flow aid if you want to. That is up to you, but you see how I mix it on the wet palette. You know how I do it. And then this is the important part: wake it off. That's right, take the excess off. Right there on, I'm using this little piece of cardboard. You can use anything you want. The back of your hand, a lot of people do your nail. I wear gloves when I do that. That's just my personal preference. But you know, it really gives it that stark white and excellent coverage when you're using inks with that. And I want it for coverage, definitely, because here I am using bone white now. And if you've ever tried to spray bone white over black, you know it's going to take like forever. So having that base coat, having that ink, having that extra opacity really helps with this step right here. Once it's white, it's so easy to put that bone white in because it's just a warm white. And I like the warm white because it's in strict contrast to the cold blues or that gray of the Space Wolf army. That's why I think having bones on that kind of army really, really works, because it is a complementary color with the warm and the white. I guess a warm white is more reddish or brownish or yellowish, or you have all those little tones that really stand out. That's why, again, Space Wolf armor, when it has all these little bits, they really stand out. All right, so next up, I'm doing these right there. I'm doing an ivory now. I'm just doing straight ivory. I'm playing around with the color ivory right now instead of white, seeing what kind of effects it does. I'm trying to get different from the bones as far as the color, so I figured maybe a different base tone will change the color so it'll look more like paper than bone. It won't look like bone like labels right there. I do write in those labels. I do look at the books, Space Wolf, the omnibuses, and Seraphon Sepia here. I do write the name here. He's Strawberjorn, which is, if you do know the lore, Ragnar's hated enemy in the beginning, but they become companions, and he survives. So he was the one that raided his village and killed just about everybody in the beginning of the book. Now, I did not much of a spoiler there, so if you read the first chapter or two, you kind of got the gist of what I just said. So I mean, it's a great omnibus. If you haven't read it yet, do read it. I just figured at some point in time he got killed and he became a Dreadnought, and they gave him a Redemptor Dreadnought body, because you know it's the soul of something, right? So you could put it into a machine, and in my opinion, Primaris or not Primaris, I don't care. I really don't care. I like to have a mixed army. That's the way I'm going to have. If everybody's going to go to Primaris, then good on them. I'm going to have a mixed army because I painted all my miniatures, so that's it. And the story. I did take this into account because I did make all my Space Marines. I put cork to raise them up to get them to about the size of a Primaris Space Marine. So when I put them as a mixed army, it doesn't look like you have some shorter dudes and taller dudes. It looks like everybody's about the same height. So I take that into consideration. But yes, I am going to use both in my armies. Alrighty, some heavy blue-gray right now, and then what we're going to do is just picking out the stone little metals there. I like the heavy blue-gray. It's very good. It's a very good mid-tone, and you can get some non-oil for shading to get into there, and then just go back with a coal gray for the highlights, and they look like stone to me. So, of course, you can dry brush that stuff, but when you have all this detail, I kind of stay away from dry brushing, you know? But that's just me. Okay. So yeah, this is a really fun model to put together. Actually, it didn't take long at all. I've never put together the entire model kit, so I am looking forward to the new Space Wolves release. Oh my gosh, I am so looking forward to that release, and I just hope I find somebody to take Gene Stealers. Maybe I'll put it online, but so is everybody else, in my opinion. All right, I'm going to start with some brass. That's right, brass, and that's from Vallejo model color. I have it. I might as well use it. This is a departure from all my other ways to paint a gold. So again, trying something new, going for a brass as the base coat. Maybe highlighting it with some metal color gold on just where the light catches, and seeing where that leaves me as far as that, and silver for extreme highlight if you want to do gold. That's a great way to do gold. It really worked out for me in this model, and I did enjoy it, using it, because I was a little pensive about using anything but the Vallejo metal colors. Since I switched over to them, I hardly ever go back. But then I have all these paints that I'm just like, oh well, you just wasted your money, you wasted your time, and they don't look bad in my opinion. And speaking of brass, I am picking out rivets. That's right. Always pick out your rivets. It's those small little details that really make or break a model, in my opinion. You really want to look at all the small details that you have within your model. And when you look closely, those rivets in gold especially really pop out. Now, I did do some weathering in here, and it's something new I was doing. It's called not varnishing your models and then taking off that glove you see that I have there and handling your models so this way the tips of it kind of rip off just a little bit. It creates an understated kind of rupturing and tearing and weathering. So it's just something new adding on to the mix. That feature, a lot of people don't like to use that because you can actually rub off the paint from other things, but hey, I live dangerously sometimes. Don't forget all the rivets. Okay, moving on to Reikland Fleshade, and that's a shade, and I'm shading over this brass because it's brass and it's not the model color gold. I am a little more careless when it comes to shading, and I normally never shade down, and I guess I can use the gloss variety of this, and I almost knocked over my shade. When am I going to learn to put some poster tack in there and put it down? I don't know when. I keep saying to do it, and yes, I should do it, but for some reason, I just keep forgetting. I am, oh my gosh. All right, so what I'm thinking about doing is just taking some poster tack and putting it onto some bases, and then that's it. They'll all be on bases. But then again, they don't fit nicely into my rack that I have. They have a GW paint rack, so there you go. All right, so now it's time to hit all the brass piece, not just that little carapace there, but we're going to go on to the guns and the backs here, onto the shading on the wolf. And this actually has some pelt on there, and I'm going to blink pelts and how I do pelts up here. All right, that's fur. All right. Next up, we're going to the base, so we're starting to get onto the home stretch here. I'm going to use some PVA glue, white glue. I use Elmer's Glue All, but you can use any, I guess. I do not like using the school glue. It's a weaker variety. I do like to use the Glue All, but if you have a more powerful one, then hey, go for it. So once I got a general shape, I know where the feet are going to be. I put the PVA glue. I'm using pine bark. You can use a lot of different ones. Make sure you wash them. I baked them for like 9 minutes in the oven to kill any parasites if there are anything in there. And then I'm using some fine rolled gravel that I got from the end of my driveway. That's right, it's exclusive. Make sure you get those tiny little aggregates and shift out all the big pieces. So this way you put them separately when you want a larger rock. But the fine stuff, the powdery stuff, that's the place to be. All right, now it's filled. I put it over a napkin so I could pour the rest of it back into the container. That's really, really important to do. I also use skulls from Citadel to add onto this base. I do that off screen, and then I actually primed it up black again using Stynylrez, and then I put the gray highlights that I'm doing right now. I'm using Stynylrez the gray. So there you go, not the gray, but gray. That sounds a little bit like Lord of the Rings there. Stynylrez the gray. Going into battle. Okay, I couldn't help it. All right, so you're going to notice I am slowly bringing this up. I mean slowly bringing it up. You can overdo this really quickly. You want to keep the black. You want to keep the shadows. I'm not moving it around. I'm not getting at a 45-degree angle. I'm trying to hit it in one angle, so this way we can all very well see exactly, and I do mean exactly, where the sun is. I'm going to hit the highest highlights, like the top of the skull and the top of the rocks, more than I'm hitting anything else. Though where the feet are, some of it's going to get covered, but I'm going to hit those areas, just the border right there on each one, and trying to create a variant. So you see that? You see the color transitions so quickly, so easy to do. Bases are... they're underrated. A lot of people don't like to do bases, or they just throw a tough on it there and call it a day. Do yourself a favor. If you're going to throw a tough on anything, hit some shade and shade it down so it can look like it's painted, so it doesn't look out of place, So everything needs to be painted with acrylic so it can all be unified. Putting a tough there, in my opinion, looks just off. It's like, this is realistic looking thing next to this fake looking thing, and it just throws it off visually. So bases are understated. Do pay attention to your basing materials. People pay attention to faces, bases, and banners when you have an army. So your base is super important. That's one of the things people notice. Even if you have a sea of whatever faction you have, they will notice that base. They'll look in the face, and if you have any heraldry, they will stare at that. All right, everything else, you miss something, that's okay. All right, bone white time. I'm going to bring all the skulls. Now, you don't really see too many skulls here, but there are plenty. I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 skulls, including that big one in the back. There's quite a few. So I'm bringing them up, and you'll notice it as I bring them up how many skulls there actually are. Now what I'm trying to do is hit it from a little bit of a 45-degree angle, just a little bit of a 45-degree angle for each one of those. 45, that's a little too steep. I would say about 55. All right, 55 to 60-degree angle, trying to get there. And I kind of do from that angle and go up to the 90-degree. This way the light comes from the center of, like, say, the bridge of the skull and go all the way to the tip of the skull, kind of thing. And just trying to highlight the areas. Now, don't worry if you have a little bit of overspray in here. I think it adds character. So, it's just the way it is. And bringing up these skulls are so much fun because this is where the actual thing starts to come to life. You got to see really all the details start popping out, because what you're doing is you're actually highlighting, or what you're doing is bringing a focus to all those extra little bits that are not aggregate, that are not any kind of stone or lifeless thing. These things once had life. That's why it's a warm white that I'm using. It's why it's a bone white. It has a little bit of yellowish brown tint to it, and it really makes that come alive. Now, do not get rid of your black. The black undertones that you put in there, do not do it. Don't get rid of it, because then all this work that you're doing is for absolutely nothing. Okay, I'm telling you right now. But if you do it like this and control yourself and make sure that you don't, 1, push the trigger back too much on your airbrush, and 2, try not to get full coverage over the entire thing, you'll be fine. You'll have these results right here. All right, some Drakenoff Nightshade, because this is a death world of Fenris. I mean, it is cold. There's going to be some kind of blue coming out through here. So I like doing this, and I just like to hit just the little edges of the skulls in black, and then next up is a Seraphon Sepia. The Seraphon Sepia is a little bit of warm. At some point, there's that one day in the year in Fenris that the sun actually shines, and it's somewhat warm compared to what it is throughout the year. So there is that little bit of dirt that kicks up. And I do want to represent that with the around Seraphon Sepia, in which I just do highlights here and there. To notice that wherever it seems way too lifeless and boring, I just want to add interest to it, and that's what I do. I always do on the sides and not at the top. So you're doing it at a 45-degree angle, or maybe even less than a 45-degree angle. You want to hit it at a 35-degree angle at some points. There are some areas where I come in 90, and that's usually the rocks, and that's okay. All right. Do not cover all your Drakenoff Nightshade. You're having visual interest in there. You're adding different colors. All right. Time for the decal. Now, decal use micro sol to soften the decal to conform to a regular surface of the side pauldron. You use micro sol from Microscale Industries. I really like using that product along with water to loosen up your decal. So if you don't know how to work with decals, I've been working with decals since I was 11 years old. I'm 44 now. quite a few years. So I use that microsol and just stretch out any water bubbles. And then here is a tape over here. Take a Q-tip to take all the extra moisture off. Just make sure it's dried up just a little bit. Again, you're flattening the surface, conforming it to the area, and absorbing all the moisture up. Those Q-tips do an amazing job of sucking up all that water. So that is definitely what you're going to want to do. Now, don't be too aggressive with this, because the thing about this is that if you push too hard, it'll tear your decal off. So do not be aggressive with this. Just really lightly. You don't need to be aggressive unless you need to flatten something out. Then you can go a little bit heavier, but really not much. There I am flattening some pieces out that were bubbling up, just trying to get to it. You can be more aggressive once it's completely dry, and there you go, right? So once you got this completely dry and you use your Q-tip, you got to go and use microset. Again, I just water around just a little bit. And microset improves adhesion. You don't want this decal to come off. So you're kind of like trying to permanently affix it to it. And that's what I'm doing. I'm just putting this over here, making sure that all the ends of it is covered. And again, softening up that decal. Again, be very careful. You may want to put some matte medium in there. All right, time to do the border, which is Chared Stone. I prefer that for my Space Wolves. You can use any color, really. So yeah, with decals, make sure that you're going to want to put a matte medium on it if it's glossy. Any kind of matte medium will do. I use Liquitex matte medium, but spraying with a good old dull coat is fine. I decanted dull coats, so you can look at that up here if you want to use your dull coat through an airbrush, or even brush it on yourself. So this way you're not toning down all your metallics. So there you go. Now, I do not use a matte varnish throughout the entire thing, because I do not throw my miniatures around. They get placed in a case and they're very well protected, and they travel with me, and I delicately take things out. They don't get Cheetos on it. Okay. That's no. All right, I have a tutorial on how to make snowy bases. You can see that up here, basically following a lot, and I give tribute to Vince Venturella for that inspiration to do this base. But you can change it up any way you'd like to. And that's it, fellas. See you on the outro. Well, there it is. A Space Wolves Primaris Redemptor Dreadnought done and ready for the battlefield and ready for that codex. Well, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. And if you enjoyed this tutorial, like, share, comment, and subscribe. And I'll catch you next time on the Miniatures Paintbrush.